Audience, welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. I'm your host Faraz Darvesh. What is going on with the airline industry in Pakistan and South Asia? Let's check out some data. Let's look at this pie chart, which is showing the amount of international traveler annually in Pakistan. So it looks like 14 million people are roughly traveling to Pakistan, and looks like PIA, the Pakistan International Airline, has got the biggest portion of those travelers. And then we could see AirBlue, and then we have Emirates, Qatar Airways, Saudi Arabian Airline. And then let's look at the other pie chart that shows the domestic travel in Pakistan. Looks like 7.2 million people are traveling domestically in Pakistan. Yes, again, PIA has got the biggest share, and then we have Shaheen Air, and then we have AirBlue. They also have the share. So what is really going on in Pakistan? Part of this, we hear that Pakistan's airline, Pakistan International Airline, PIA, is not doing so well. Why are they not doing so well? Part of it has to do with the tourism. Definitely, Pakistan needs to promote its own tourism. There has to be more tourism-related travel and then business travel. So let's take it to the panel and see what is really going on with PIA. We hear this a lot, that the airline industry in Pakistan has not been doing so well. Most of it has to do with PIA. Riaz, let me start with you. Tell us what is really going on in the airline industry in Pakistan.
So as you said, there's been a dramatic increase in air travel in Pakistan. The number of international travelers flying in and out of Pakistan is close to 15 million. And then another 7 million people fly domestic routes. Mm-hmm. So a total of about 22 million. PIA has the biggest market share on the domestic routes. It controls about 2/3 of the market on domestic. And the rest of it is divided among Shaheen and AirBlue and Serene.
Right.
On the international routes, PIA has actually a much smaller market share. It's only 22% of the market is PIA, and the rest is other airlines that include, the second largest is actually Emirates, and then you have AirBlue and Qatar and Shaheen and others.
Right.
PIA remains a dominant player in Pakistan. Now, if you compare that to India, in India, the international market is about 59 million passengers. This is according to the data for 2017. 59 million passengers is about 4 times Pakistan's, international market of 15 million. And the population of India is about 6.5 times. So that means that on a per capita basis, there are more Pakistanis traveling on international routes than Indians. But on the domestic front, there's a huge difference between India and Pakistan. In India, last year, 117 million Indians traveled on domestic flights.
As compared to 7.2 million in Pakistan.
Versus 7.2 million in Pakistan. So there's a huge gap. Now, one of the reasons, actually, there was an article just recently in Financial Times that explains it pretty well. Says that the fares in Pakistan are so much higher for domestic flights. The person who wrote this is Kieran Stacey, says that, the fare from Karachi to Islamabad is about $100. This is what it says.
One way.
Yeah. And compare that to Delhi, Mumbai, which is about the same distance, their fare is only $35 in India. So it's about, the fares in domestic routes in Pakistan are about 3 times higher.
I traveled within Malaysia.
Yeah.
The fare was $14 from Penang Island to Kuala Lumpur, which was about a 35-minute flight. It was $14.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense. I mean, the elasticity, there's between price and demand, there's always elasticity. If you lower the price, you get, more demand. So in Pakistan, fares being 3 times higher than India cut the air travel, the demand by about, to about a third of what it is in India in terms of population, in terms of the percentage. Like about 3.5% of Pakistanis fly on domestic lines in Pakistan, domestic air travel in Pakistan versus about 8% of Indians. So if the Pakistanis take a page from the Indian playbook and they increase competition, they bring in more players in the domestic market, and force PIA to do a better job, they could cut the fares and increase domestic demand significantly.
Misbah, let me take it over to you. Tell us the background of. I want to know. We all hear the glories of PIA being the super airline in 1960s, 1970s. We see the pictures, the advertisement. PIA having one of the best air hostesses, pilots, best crew in the world. Now see where PIA stands.
Among the best.
Among the best. So what has gone wrong so far?
Yeah, before going into the PIA specifics, let's see in the Asian market how it is growing. This time, see, when you talk about the airline growth, you have 2 factors very important. One is called as RPK, revenue passenger kilometer, that revenue when how many passenger travel 1 kilometer of the air distance, and other one called as FTK, which is freight ton kilometer, that how many tons you can take 1 kilometer. So the growth from, if you go from 2014 to 2017, 21% rise in the RPK and 18% rise in FTK, So it is growing, and this is the overall world. And if you see the demands, like air travel demand in Asia, you compare that. If you look at it, US, from 2006 until 2026, it is almost 38% would be increasing in US.
So some of it is projections, some of them are historical.
That's true. It is all projections actually. Okay, ASEAN countries, look at 10 countries, ASEAN countries, they have like 400% increase. Expected is increase, while China is 430%, India is 380% increase. So you can imagine, and Europe is also high, but not as high.
So Pakistan is far behind them.
Pakistan is, yes, exactly. And that's what I say, that first you see the market, and before you and 3 of us criticize PIA's trouble, so PIA has to compete with this. Then there are other things. Then you have, I only talked about the ASEAN countries, China and India. I did not talk about the countries like Gulf countries. About the Gulf countries, this POFS, which is called as the coalition, this is the coalition which is basically Partnership for Open and Fair Skies. They claim that the Middle Eastern airlines, Gulf airlines, they hide their financial records, and actually they have evidence that they kind of give the subsidies, quietly.
So you mean the rulers are subsidizing?
Subsidizing it, they're giving money to the airline to reduce the fares. So competing for Pakistan is really tough. And
but no, it can't be, right? Look at Emirates. Emirates has been growing, so we can't just say that the ruler of Dubai is feeding money into Emirates, and this is why Emirates is growing.
And why not? I mean,
come on, why would he be constantly giving so much money?
Because it's a dictatorship, it's a family rule.
To an airline, what is his benefit?
It's a family rule, it is their airline. And now look at it. In 2008, PIA, between US and Pakistan route, PIA used to have 28.9% bookings, and Gulf Airlines will have a 38.9%. And now it is 73.8% Gulf Airlines and only 11%.
Misbah, we have seen the growth. I mean, Riyadh just compared with India, right? We can't just say the Gulf being subsidized by the rulers. I'm not really convinced with that notion.
No, I mean, it is not the matter of that it is my research and I found out they are doing it. I'm quoting you some authentic organization, which is not only, which is...
But PIA, why is PIA so far behind in the race as compared to India?
Okay, PIA is far behind because of some other reasons also. First of all, they are overemployed, first of all. You know, you have so many people employed inside PIA. Then second thing is that, of course, they have monopoly, but still, you know, PIA is among the biggest industry in Pakistan. It has like revenue of $500 million. But the thing is that they are almost 47 billion rupees from 2003 to 2015. Government paid them, you know, so of course they are in loss. And so these things are the main reasons which can be
they
fixed.
Need to do some restructuring.
Yeah, some restructuring
let me take it over to you.
And all
You just
that.
heard Ms. What do you have to say to this?
See, we have to put this in context. The airline business has dramatically changed since 1978. In 1978, the United States passed legislation, US Congress passed legislation called the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978. It basically deregulated all airline activity. For example, one of the regulations that they had in place before this legislation passed, the airlines had to charge a minimum fare for certain routes. This was mandated by the US government. The legislation said, no, there's going to be no minimum. It also made it possible, made it a lot easier for low-cost airlines to enter the market, which they couldn't do before because they couldn't provide the same kind of service. They had an opportunity as a result of it to get into the business. So a lot of these big airlines that were very big at the time, you know, remember Pan Am? We used to fly Pan Am back then. It was a huge airline. It was Trans World Airline. It was Eastern Airline in the United States. All these airlines went out of business. And now what's one of the biggest airlines in the United States is Southwest, which was a low-cost airline. At the time, they only flew a couple of routes. They couldn't go very far. And all of a sudden, they have grown dramatically. So this business of airlines, the commercial aviation business, has become much, much more competitive. And to run a competitive business, you need to have very good professional management. You need to use technology. One of the things, for example, that I just recently saw, you know, we have our friend Monis Rahman, who flies frequently in Pakistan. About a couple of days ago, he posted a picture of an air cabin of a PIA.
Right.
And that basically shows, it was like a 10 o'clock flight in the morning. He was going from Karachi to Lahore. It was empty. Right. He actually posted a picture of all these empty seats flying. No airline in the United States or anywhere else, any commercial airline that's competitive would allow that to happen. They use what's called yield management software. What yield management software does is constantly looks at how many seats are filled, how many tickets have been sold, and it cuts the prices until you get as many of the seats filled up as possible.
Right.
So when you fly an empty seat, basically that revenue is lost forever.
Right.
Once you've flown that, you know, let's say you're flying, you know, in this...
so this is having the technology.
Not just that, it's terrible business. I mean, technology is available. If they had good professional managers, they would use the technology. They would also use the technology to make sure that the airplanes don't stay much on the ground. In fact, the longer airplane stays on the ground, the more money the airline loses.
Right.
The longer it stays up in the air, the more money you make. It's a very simple thing.
Very simple.
So in like a Trans World Airline, in the Southwest airline business here, you see they turn them around very, very quickly.
Right.
They get the passengers off, they load them again, and then they're flying again.
And this is what Emirates does as well.
Yeah. So all these airlines, the reason is they have professional management.
Right.
In Pakistan, the people who are hired, PIA is basically used like other state-owned enterprises in Pakistan. It is used essentially for the purpose of political patronage.
Right.
What they do is they hire their favorite people to reward them because of their political support, not because they're qualified to run an airline. In this day and age, when this business, airline business, is so sophisticated, it requires so much professionalism, so much management skill, so much knowledge of the airline industry. They hire these people. Not only they hire them, they hire lots of them.
Right.
So the technology has allowed other airlines that are competitive to have as few people as possible with minimum staff. And they buy these airplanes that are very fuel efficient. They actually, the newer airplanes all have very light frame. They're composite materials, so they use very little fuel, and they do very good fuel management. They do very good yield management to make sure that they fill up as many of the seats as possible. All of this is missing in Pakistan.
When was the last time PIA bought a new plane?
I don't know. I don't have that data. But my gut tells me that even if they just bought new planes, that wouldn't make much difference. That's obviously going to help. But the bigger problem is, even if you buy a new plane and you fly it empty, you're not going to make money.
You're not going to make money, exactly. Yeah. No, maybe 3 to 5 years back, I had an incident where, I kind of dealt with a PIA manager. He did not know how to use a PC.
Maybe you saw inside that we had a flight from Dubai to Islamabad, and first they say that there is a storm in Islamabad, so flight is delayed. Turns out there was no storm in Islamabad.
But I think the entire management system is fractured in PIA.
Totally fractured.
We all know this.
And inside,
I want to know what are the hurdles of Ghulam Rasul Sayan, which I've heard his talk. Looks like a very talented guy. But what are his hurdles to bring change, right?
Well, actually, Riaz just basically mentioned all
political
the things, political associations and all that. If you are expert, you cannot make change if the whole chain has a problem. I mean, you have to wash everything, overhaul the system in that,
Right.
But whenever government talks about to do the privatization or something, there is a Reuters start and all other political parties come and then we will not let you. So that can never happen. Any government comes, they cannot do that.
Right.
So as long as we will be going in this direction, see, the thing is that right now this Asia Pacific has a market share of aviation market share is 35%, more than United States, which is 24%. So
right.
So that big market, they have to compete. And the route between US and Pakistan, that area is the biggest competitor are the Gulf airs.
Emirates, Qatar.
Gulf airs. Like all those airs. See, they have only 5% so far. But they used to have less than 1%. Now they have like 5%. And PIA is reducing further. Right. So, of course, I mean...
So, PIA is shrinking. Riaz, let me take it to you. Do you think the political associations are the only hurdle or is there anything
I think
else?
that's the biggest one.
That's the biggest.
Unless you hire professional management, nothing is going to change. And not only professional management, but professional management that is fully empowered to run it as a business, meaning they can hire and fire people as they wish. With all the unions that have, powerful unions, and most of these unions are connected to political parties, it's very hard, very difficult.
But it's not easy to deal with the unions. They can take their case to Supreme Court and challenge it.
Even if they couldn't, I mean, the point is that every government, when they come in, they reward their supporters by giving them jobs in state-owned industries. Whether it's the steel mill, whether it's the PIA, whether it's the petroleum companies that are run by the government, that are owned by the government. So as long as we have this culture of political patronage, where these companies, state-owned enterprises, are run not as a business, but as a way to give political favors as a part of the patronage system to their political supporters, none of them are going to be fixed up. So not only do you need good, strong professional management, you need to have these managements empowered to make decisions. Okay, right. The problem is so bad right now that nobody, even if they wanted to privatize PIA, which they have been trying to, there are no takers because they come with all these strings attached. Right. They have huge debts. Right. So nobody wants to inherit those debts. They have all these unions that are very powerful. It's going to be very hard for them to make changes, to hire and fire people as they wish. So all of these are big hurdles. So my fear, one of the things that India has done, which is very smart, is Air India in Indian domestic market has only 15% market share. So they let these new airlines in. So essentially, even though Air India still operates domestic flights, they lose a lot of money. But there are other companies that are coming in that and this actually helps the economy. It creates more jobs. If you have an ailing airline like the PIA, even if you fill it up with a lot of people, you still can't create enough. You will create a lot more jobs if there were 5 or 6 or 10 other airlines competing for business. They would be hiring people and they would be running it as a business and making money. And instead of taking money from the government treasury, from the taxpayer, they will be paying taxes to the treasury. So I think those are the kinds of tough decisions that need to be made. And the politicians are not willing to make those decisions.
This will require the support of politicians.
Yes, and they're not willing to do that because they see this as a way to reward their own friends.
Misbah.
Yeah, this is the problem, I think.
So then we can't expect any improvement in PIA.
No, you can be improving. You can do the more private airlines.
Can probably do whatever.
I think they should do what India has done.
Yeah, more
make
private
it easier for other airlines to enter the business and let them, compete. And make sure PIA competes with them. And if PIA cannot compete, it goes out of business.
Yeah, and then the good part is that if you have more airlines, people have jobs there. So they don't have to be inside PIA only, so they can just
I don't know if these people would be hired
well, by that's true too. How much is
they're going to be very picky in terms of who they hire.
So now coming to the political involvement. People's Party, we had People's Party and then now PMLN. So and then before that we have President Musharraf who wanted to bring lots of change. Did he not succeed?
They all tried. But the politicians have been around forever, At that time,
why couldn't President
during Musharraf's years, they had these PMLQ and MQM. They had a lot of people working. For PIA. Then came People's Party. People's Party put in a lot of people in that. They hired a lot of people. They're cronies. And then since since PMLN government, they have been actually staffing it up with their people. So the problem is they all have a political stake in it.
Right. Misbah, over to you. Do you think President Musharraf could not do it, as Riaz said, because of PMLQ and MQM?
Well, it's nothing to do with Musharraf or anybody. Of course, Musharraf has his own vested interest. He has to survive in the environment as a president. So, of course, he cannot He cannot make people angry. So that is the thing. Of course, he didn't do anything. But when People's Party came, it just continues. It's not that these are better and these are worse. They're all same. It was
actually, if anything, PMLN, I think, has been more willing to privatize things, and they have been trying. But it's very difficult for them with all the other parties opposing
any party to do that. Yeah, it's a mess. And look at it in 60s when people...
And it's true, not just of PIA, it's just one example. It's the same issue with steel mill. The same issue with PSO. All these companies, the government-owned enterprises, they hire a lot of people, they lose money. PSO, I think, is making money simply because they sell so much oil and they have sort of a monopoly, so they're still able to make money. But the bottom line is that the PSO could be a lot more successful if it was
it's
truly privatized.
very simple idea. It just make them independent from political affairs.
Well,
That's easier said than done.
said but done.
Yeah,
Right.
It's easier said than done.
Okay, I think Riaz, I think we have covered this topic very well. I think audience, in the next few weeks, we will bring in some fundamental topics. Like today, we discussed the airline industry, the downfall, or what is stopping airline industry, or especially the PIA, from growing rapidly. So we will touch on some fundamental issues of South Asia in upcoming shows. Riaz, thank you so much. Misbah, until next week, goodbye.